TLC, or the Texas Language Center. And where our aim is to support online language teaching, both at UT and outside. So we may have some participants from outside of UT. If so, welcome. I would like to note too that we are awarding certificates for participants who complete each webinar. And if you're interested in professional development credits, we will also be awarding CPE credits. And anyone who wants those can earn up to 1.5 CPE credits for each event. And we're going to offer 2 events per month in September, October, November. And then we'll also be offering the same 2 events per month starting in February, March, and April of next semester. So plenty of opportunity for professional development and for earning certificates and CPE credits. Another thing I would like to point out is that we are recording today's webinar, and the recording will be available in a special UT box folder that I created just for you all. In that folder, you will find not only the webinar recording for this meeting today, but also a handout that hopefully will support the webinar recording that you are watching, and the slides we're using today, and a cheat sheet, I love that word or term, with a list of resources and web addresses for things that you can use to support your online language teaching. So we got a lot of stuff for you. We will also give you more information about those resources and these future web events later in the webinar. But now let's just get started. Okay, so your webinar team has set some key objectives for your experience here today. First, we want you to come away from this meeting knowing the basic steps that you can follow to prepare your own transition to online teaching. Now, even if some of you may have taught before, even if some of you may have taught online before, we want to be sure that you feel well prepared and confident to start teaching online Wednesday or Thursday of next week. I know, hard to believe that that's where we are, but we are. We also want you to be aware of the essential capabilities of Canvas and Zoom for contributing to your online teaching and to your students' online learning. And finally, we want you to be aware of the tech tools, the technological tools and the resources that you can use to get started teaching with Zoom and Canvas. After this webinar, you should know how to set up your Zoom account. You should know how to invite your students to your Zoom class meetings and office hours. And you should know something about how to deliver language and culture instruction using Canvas and Zoom. Okay, so with that, I would like to stop sharing my screen briefly and launch a poll, okay? And here it is. And is it visible? Can everybody see this? Okay, so the question I'd like you to respond to is, how do you gauge your ability to teach online this fall? Okay, very confident, unsure, not confident, or totally unsure. Those options are interesting. Okay, we've got 88% have now responded, 91. And there's a lag. It looks like maybe everyone who wanted to respond has done so. So we've got a good number of people. Let me end the poll and share the results. Okay, so we've got a good number of people who are feeling confident or very confident. Okay, so 19 out of 33 respondents say that they're in those categories, but we've also got some people feeling unsure, not confident, or totally not sure. So that's good that you're here today, because our goal is to help you build that confidence, and we want to do everything that we can to make you feel ready for next week. Okay, so going back now to my sharing screen. We've talked about our webinar objectives. We've done our poll. And what I'd like to call your attention to now is the graphic in front of you. This graphic maps out how your webinar is going to proceed today, starting with the introduction, which is what we're doing now, moving to the transitioning to online language instruction, Canvas essentials, next Zoom meetings and Zoom essentials, resources and contacts, and finally a wrap up and question and answer. So that's how we will proceed starting now. We've just finished the introduction, and now we're going to move to talking about how to transition to the online environment, some of the things you want to think about. You notice the title at the top of this slide is Basic Steps, and then in parentheses, I have the word TART. Now, English speakers know that the word TART has a lot of different meanings, right? Varied meanings on top of that. But what it means for us has more to do with the spelling than the meaning of the word. And so if we look at each letter of the word, we want to use those as an acronym to help us remember some of the essentials related to online instruction. And the first one is T, and that stands for transparency. Okay, this is intended to help us remember to communicate often and very clearly with our students about what's happening in our online courses, and also about the expectations we have for their performance, so that they are totally aware of what's going on as we proceed in the semester. The A stands for accessibility. It serves to remind us that we want to be sure to remain available to our students and to make our courses accessible to all of our online students, wherever they may be, whatever technologies they may be using, and whatever challenges they may be facing. The R stands for resilience, and it helps us recall that a lot of what we may be facing in the next term, or this term now that's coming fall, is unpredictable and uncertain. And so the best thing we can do is remain as nimble and as flexible as possible, especially with respect to our student needs. And lastly, the final T represents, as you might imagine, technology, the tools that we need to be effective as teachers, and the tools that our students need to be successful language learners. Okay, so with that, let's take a quick look at more of the basic steps that I mentioned before. The first one is make a communication plan. That goes back to both the transparency and the accessibility in our acronym, right? So announce to your students the ways in which they will be able to get in touch with you, whether it's during Zoom class meetings, if you're doing synchronous meetings, if it's outside of class, if it's by phone or by email, if it's through Zoom meetings, whatever it is that you think will work for the task ahead, set that up and make sure the students are aware. Second, review your course learning objectives. Reassure the students that your expectations for online learning are just as well thought out and well conceived and reasonable as objectives you would set in a regular face-to-face or in-person classroom setting. Next, evaluate your class structure. You may find, I know I did, that delivering instruction online doesn't actually map quite one-to-one with what you might do in the classroom, in the physical classroom. So you want to think about that class structure, and if you find one thing is not working, don't worry. Just go ahead, try something new, use your experience as a data point, and work from there. Keep making improvements and communicate that with your students. They will appreciate the fact that you're being candid, and also the fact that you're so thoughtful about how to structure your class in the ways that are best for them. The last thing about that is to plan class activities well and plan them carefully, perhaps even more carefully than you would have in a typical face-to-face situation in an in-person setting. As you go along, this extra time that you spend preparing and planning will probably become more second nature to you, and you won't have to spend quite so much time, say later in the semester, but you can invest it now at the beginning. The next thing is to talk about recording your Zoom classes. There's been some talk about this. Students who may not be able to attend your class sometimes for very legitimate and even difficult reasons may benefit from seeing a recording of your class. They can see both the things that you present in class and also the kinds of interactions that take place in the classes that they miss.
So the next thing you want to do is make sure those recordings are accessible, going back to the A in our TART acronym. How are you going to record them? Where are you going to store them? How will the students find them? And for how long will they be available? I know some people keep them up only for a certain period of time. Students need to know that. Next, we want to talk about managing class documents. These would mainly be print documents, things like handouts, exercises, or assessments. Announce to students how they will get access to those. Will you put them in Canvas files and then they download them? Will you add them to an assignment in Canvas where they just see it when they log into Canvas? Or will you email them to your students? Whatever you choose to do, whatever works for you, just make sure students are well aware of how they will get the documents they need. Then manage their submissions. Once they complete the assignment, how do you want those turned in? You have some of the same options there. Students can turn them in by email attachment to you, or you may create a little assignment in Canvas and have them upload a document there, or you may create an assignment with a text box and just let the students type in their text there. So lots of different options are available to you. It's not to say that you need to use all of them. You just need to kind of be aware and think of the ones that will work best for you. I typically choose one path and work on that. And once I'm happy with it, I might branch out. I'm not the bravest person when it comes to technology. So I totally understand how some of you may not want to just try 100 different things at one time. And lastly, review your assessments. Assessments that you may have already given in a face-to-face in-person class may not be ready or appropriate for an online environment. So you'll need to think about those documents and how you used them before, and think about how you might be able to, I don't know, tweak them or revise them in some way that will make them easier for students to use and more appropriate for students to use in an online setting. Okay, so all of these are topics that my team and I are going to address in some detail as we discuss more the nuts and bolts of our main online tools. Canvas, which is our learning management system, and Zoom, which is our online conference and meeting tool, and also other resources that we will tell you about as we go along. So, moving on, we've finished talking now about transitioning online. And the next thing we're going to be talking about is Canvas and the Canvas essentials. Now, I know that many of you have used Canvas. In fact, probably all of us have used it in some way or another. But how many of us are familiar with how to use Canvas and its features and functions in the context of language teaching online? There's always more we can learn, even if we learn some amount. But let's look at what might be possible for us to do using Canvas as we go forward next week. So I'm going to now stop sharing my screen, and we'll have a poll to ask you about your experience with Canvas. Okay, and in this poll, we ask, how comfortable do you feel using Canvas? Totally, just comfortable, neutral, uncomfortable should be one word, and totally uncomfortable. Okay, and the votes are being cast. 88% of the vote has been cast. Okay, 91, 94, 97, one more, and we've got the whole group. Okay, I think that one person's not feeling like responding today, but that's perfectly fine. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. And it looks like most of you, 24 out of 35, looks like everyone responded. 68% feel either totally comfortable or comfortable, but a few of you are either neutral, uncomfortable, or totally uncomfortable. So it doesn't hurt, even if you do feel comfortable with Canvas, a few days before the semester, just review a few of its options and features and functions. So even if you are comfortable, you may benefit from what we're about to do, which is look at Canvas. So I'm going to stop sharing the poll, close it,
and share my screen again. I walk you through what I'm doing because I find that these are many of the same things you'll be doing yourselves. There we go. And I'm going to now take you to the a Canvas course site. Now, I'll just point out that this particular site is called a Sandbox. You'll see that right up here. That means it's sort of a rough draft for a final course that we would actually offer with students. I'm using the Sandbox because we can't use live courses right now for FERPA reasons. We have to protect the privacy of our students, and right now our students are populating our courses. So I'll be able to show you more if I just use the Sandbox. So just imagine that this is a course that's getting ready to be delivered, say, next week. Okay, we are at the home page. So if you look over here on your left, you'll see that's where we are.
Excuse me, you are not sharing your screen at this time, so the audience cannot see.
I thought I did share my screen, but I will share again. Okay. Oh, it stopped for some reason. Okay, now do you see it? Yes, okay, great. I will make it bigger. All right, so there we are on the home page. You'll notice that this is a fairly simple thing. I put an icon, and then there's my syllabus for the semester, and scrolling down, I have the course description. I like doing it this way, putting this on my home page, because then every time the students come to the course, they have access to their syllabus and they have access to the course description. So, you know, typically we hand those out at the beginning of the semester as a document, and who knows what happens to them after that. Okay, so what I want to do is call your attention to the left and right side of your screen. You've got a left navigation menu with different features and functions of Canvas, and then you've got a right navigation menu with some other options. So I'm going to start working through these options on the left and just talk about the ones that are probably the ones you would consider essential, or at least many of us would consider essential for getting started next week. Okay, so after the home page, we also have announcements. Announcements go back to accessibility and transparency and the communication plan. Typically in our online courses in French, we make sure there's at least one announcement every week. Sometimes there may be more if something comes up or there's something special that we want to communicate, but generally speaking, we try to keep regular communication through announcements with our students. You'll notice that the announcement appears, the most recent one, which happens to be the only one actually, appears here at the top of the page. So when the students log on, that's the first thing they see. So not only do they get this announcement here at the top of their page, but if you go to the announcements page right here, they will also get that announcement on this page. Okay, so they have two sources right there for getting announcements. Now, as we're talking about announcements and what the students would see, it's also good for you to know how to create an announcement. Now, there's one already here, and I can show that to you, I think. Well, let's see. No, I can't. It's not. There it is. Okay, sorry. I just didn't click in the right place. Sometimes that happens. All right, so this was a welcome message, and I just typed it here. If I wanted to edit it, I could just click on edit. I could change this message, and then I could also change the date at which it was published. Okay, so you can, nice thing I love about announcements is you can set them up. And once you transfer your course and use it again the next time, the announcements get transferred with it. And then all you have to do is change the dates, and you've got a lot of communications already set up for your students. So that's an example of something that you can do. Make sure if you do make changes that you save them. Okay. If you want to add an announcement, that's a fairly simple process as well. I don't seem to be seeing it now. There. No? Let me see. Go back there. There it is. So if you click here, plus announcement, and just type in the topic, the body of your announcement, and then come down here. If you don't want to post it right away, which is an option, then you can choose using the calendar when it is you want that announcement to be posted. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that because I don't need that. The other thing that you should be aware of is because we want to be able to communicate quickly and effectively and efficiently with our students, that they can also receive your announcements immediately, okay? And how they get that is by Canvas email. To do that though, they have to make a setting in their notifications in their account. So if you notice over here, we have all kinds of different notifications on this particular page. I'm using my account because clearly I don't have a student account that I can look at in the Sandbox. But the students would see the same thing. And so what you're gonna look for is here under course activities, you see announcement, and then you have some options over here. You wanna make sure that your students check the very first box. And that will ensure that they get your announcements as soon as they're posted by email. Okay, so now I will go back to my course. And moving down, we want to talk a little bit about modules. Okay, I want to make a connection, if you will, a link between the syllabus and the modules. So the way the syllabus is set up, there's a topic that's explored each day of the class. You notice that if you click on that topic, it takes a second sometimes, it takes you straight to that topic in your modules page. Okay, that's a very efficient and friendly way for students to find the material they need to work on for a given day. You can organize your modules any way you want, okay? You simply create a new module by clicking here, plus module, right? And you add one. I have several examples here. This module is set up. Module is considered just the part that's here together underneath this title, okay, which is the title of my course. And then I have an introduction and some activities that I want the students to complete. And then the rest of the course is designed similarly. The first lesson is right here. I have material that I want them to read, videos I want them to watch, and questions I want them to answer. And finally, some exercises that they will complete, followed by, down here, a couple of assessments. Notice that once you set these up in Canvas, and these are all quizzes, you can tell that by the icon. I don't know why the little rocket ship means quiz, but it does. And you can see that the due date is here, as well as the number of points associated with that exercise. So once the students complete the exercise, this activity will either be graded automatically by Canvas or it will be graded by a teacher, depending on the nature of that exercise. The important thing to notice about modules, and let me point out that Yaz here has made some very, very compelling and useful tutorial videos that we have available as well on all of these elements that I'm presenting today in Canvas. So you're welcome to look in our resources box folder, and you will be able to see all of those. They're all short, right? Yaz, a couple minutes or something, usually. But she walks you through everything that you need to do to set up your modules and to set up the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the gradebook. Okay, so going to the gradebook. In the gradebook, there will be a listing for every single assignment that you have set up in Canvas. This is important because when the students do an exercise, and I only have one student test, and that student hasn't done any work, but when the student completes these particular activities, the grades will go automatically in the gradebook. This is supremely efficient. One reason is because students can know the grade they have in the course at any moment on any day in the semester. And second, because for you can know too, but also at the end of the semester, Canvas calculates those grades for you. And all you have to do then is submit them to the registrar. So Canvas Gradebook is a very, very useful feature of Canvas, and I encourage you to check it out. Setting up the gradebook is not the easiest thing, I will point out, but again, Yaz has made a video recording walking you through that to help you so that it's not too demanding. Okay, I'm going to move on quickly to some other things here. The attendance, if you're going to keep track of attendance, you can do that straight in your Canvas course. Normally what you would see here would be a list of all the student names in your class, and then you can choose the days of attendance and mark them present or not present. There are many other options that you can use with respect to attendance as well. One of the things I like about it is that Canvas allows you to keep track of attendance, but you're not required to count attendance towards a final grade. It's your option if you do not want to do that. An advantage of keeping track of attendance even if you don't want to count it toward a grade, is that then over the course of the semester, if a student gets sick and is absent for a period of time that's worrisome, you can either reach out to that student and make sure that he or she is okay, or you can contact an advisor and the advisor will check in on that student. So it's a way for us to keep track of what's going on, especially in these very difficult and unpredictable times. Another couple of features I think you may be interested in are discussions and conferences or video conferences, okay? So I'll look first at discussions, and I have a few in my Sandbox course, as you can see here. And what will happen is these particular kinds of activities allow students to respond. You can see I've been here before. Back in March, some of you may remember, that students may respond to prompts that you give them. They may respond either by typing in a text or by making a video recording or making an audio recording and posting that by simply clicking on reply, okay? Once they post their answer, so this is a text-based one, I'm just gonna say bonjour. Wow, I'm so consistent, I did that back in March as well. I'm going to post my reply, and then if my friend Yaz wants to come along and reply, she can click here on reply and reply saying salut or whatever it was she wants to say, okay? So the nice thing about that is students are allowed to interact asynchronously, flexible with their own schedules, but they all do the same task and they all respond to each other. So it's communicative. And it's a way of getting students to interact with each other outside of class in ways that you would like. For students who are, for those of you who are teaching completely asynchronously, this could be a very, very valuable feature of Canvas. And then also we have video conferences, and you can see I don't have any here, but I could create one quite easily, a video conference. Now, the way they do it in Canvas is they use a tool called Big Blue Button. It has some limitations. We've used it before in the online classes. It allows students to meet wherever they may be in the world, in different cities, different countries, different states, what have you, online at the same time and talk to each other, make a recording and submit that to you, the instructor. Okay. There are other ways of doing this. You can do the same thing using Zoom, which is what we do now in our online classes. But the tools are both good. You just choose the one that you think will work better for you. Lastly, I'll mention Zoom. I'm not going to go into any detail about this, but I just want to call your attention to the fact that Zoom is listed in this navigation menu on the left of your screen. And when you want to use Zoom, which Max will walk you through in a moment, you'll be able to just simply click here and get started. We have Panopto video as well, another option, especially useful for those of you who want to create slideshows and also record your voice using over the slideshow and then post those for students to use. Apparently, there are some advantages to using Panopto video as compared to Zoom, but again, it would be up to you to decide which one you prefer. Lastly, you may also want students to do some kind of presentation, and they can use Panopto video for the same thing, creating their own slideshows for, say, a final project or something like that in your class. There are some other options here, some other features that you'll want to become aware of, but we're not going to talk about those today. Those are not necessarily essential. However, you do want to be aware of the files option, or files feature. You can enable that if you want and upload documents there for your students to retrieve. And you may want to also be aware of the people option because as the instructor, I hide that from the students, but as the instructor, sometimes I want to know, it shows you the students in your class, keeps track of the number of students enrolled, who the teachers are, if there's more than one, TAs, any designers or observers, you can see I have quite a few here. And then it also, what I love about it is it keeps track of how much time each person spends in the course. So if you're worried about a student who hasn't been in class for a while, you can check their activity and see when was the last time they attended class or when they were active in the class and how much time have they been spending in that course so far in the term. So it gives you some interesting data to work with. We won't talk about assignments, but I will talk briefly about settings. In settings, this is what you'll see when you click on that. The most important thing for you to be aware of in setting up your Canvas course is the navigation tool. You notice in this box, I have certain things selected, and then this box, I have certain things not selected. So if I want to add any of these elements that are not selected, up here, I can do that just by clicking and dragging like that. What you need to know is the elements that you put in the top box are the ones that you will see here and also the ones that students will see. Everything else will be hidden. So you're able to hide whatever you think is appropriate in your class. So call your attention here to this navigation bar on the right. Okay, you'll notice if I go back to the home page, it's pretty much the same as the one on the home page. I just want to call your attention to a couple of things. You can bring new content into your Canvas course if you want to. Okay, import content. I don't want to do that, but you can. I'm going to go back to the home page. There we are. There are other things you can import from. You can choose your home page. I mentioned before, this is what I chose to do, but there are other options. You can review those here. You can create a new announcement quite quickly by clicking there. There's some other options as well that you can investigate, but I want to take you first to this one, which is very handy. It's the student view. So if you ever want to see what your course looks like to the students, all you have to do is click there. And then you will see these are the things that we chose in settings that we wanted to be visible, and there they are. And then here's our subject, our syllabus, and our course description, and everything else that I showed you that is published will be visible to students. When you're finished looking at the student page, you can leave student view and simply go back to your Canvas page, home page, and to teacher view. So those are basically what we consider maybe the most important elements or features of Canvas as you're getting started in your online course and teaching next week. So I'm going to close that course, and my screen sharing stopped. So I'm going to have to screen share again, and we're going to go back now and slideshow and play from current slide. All right, so we've just finished talking about Canvas Essentials, and we're moving on to talk about Zoom meetings. So we'd like to launch a third poll to see how you feel about using Zoom. So to do that, I will get out of this, stop share, go back to polling. I'm just walking you through in case it's useful to you. Choose my third poll and launch. And for this one, we'd like to ask you pretty much the question we asked you before, but this time related to Zoom. How comfortable do you feel using Zoom to teach online? Totally comfortable, comfortable, neutral, uncomfortable, or totally uncomfortable? You guys are fast voters. Thinking a lot about voting these days. I don't know about you. Okay. 100% have voted, so I can end the poll. And it only took 28 seconds. That's how good you are. All right, so I'm gonna share the results. And look at this, totally comfortable and comfortable, about 20 people out of 36, which means some who are neutral or uncomfortable or totally uncomfortable will probably benefit a lot from what Max is about to do. So Max is gonna walk us through, I'll stop sharing. Oops, sorry. There we go. Max is gonna walk us through how we're going to use Zoom for our online classes. Take it away, Max.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Max, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today to help you transition or get started online together. First of all, I want to say, you got this. Things are going to be okay. We're here to provide support to you. I know that sometimes it can be feel a little challenging to move from face-to-face to online, but generally speaking, the first thing you have to remember is that your students will be really appreciative of the efforts that you put into this. So thanks to Pat, you're a little bit more familiar with Canvas and understand how its essential features can really support your teaching needs and goals for next semester. As Pat explained, I will now talk to you about Zoom, which is the technology that you and your students will be using as an online virtual classroom next fall. While I have to admit most of us are a little familiar with Zoom by now, my aim in this part of the presentation is really want to emphasize the key components that you as an instructor will want to master in order to make next semester as easy and as successful as possible for yourself, but more importantly, for your students. A last word before I begin, I will be mostly talking to you about using Zoom to teach synchronously, which means real time with your students. But for those of you who are interested, I will also have a word about using Zoom to teach asynchronously, entirely remotely with recordings by the end of my presentation. With that being said, let's get started. And I will start by sharing my screen and bring you back into Canvas. So here we are, again, very familiar since Pat mostly talked about it for the past couple of minutes. We are in the main page, the homepage of my Canvas course here. And as Pat was showing you the little tabs that are here on the left, for you, the first thing you'll want to do ahead of next week, which is when the semester begins, is to locate the Zoom icon here to the left and begin by thinking about scheduling your classes. And here, as you can see, we have a number of little tabs and icons that I'll be talking to you for the part of my presentation. And here, more importantly, is the one you want to begin with, which is the blue button saying schedule a new meeting. Of course, if you want to see your students, the most important thing will be to actually create a space for you and your students to meet. So let's start by doing this. By clicking on the blue button, what you will see here is a list of parameters, little boxes that you can change. The first one that you see on top here, the topic one, will have the name of your course. The most important thing that I recommend you do is to not change it. Again, for those of you who have taught last semester, you're probably familiar with this, but those of you who have not taught, students will receive a number of invitations by next week. And those can be for linguistics class, Germanic studies, chemistry, what have you. And if you change the name, that might confuse the students. So for the sake of consistency, just keep it as it is for now. This will help you and help the student. Just below, the description box here is optional, as you see, and this is for you to enter a little message if you want to give particular information regarding a class on a given date. But for now, again, you don't have to fill it, and I personally never really use it. The first part you'll have to pay attention to is when. So the first thing you'll want to do is schedule the first day of class that is happening next week, perhaps the following one. In my case, I'll be teaching right on Wednesday when the semester begins, the 26th of August. And my class will be at 10 a.m. So I will enter this right now. I'm going to scroll down and find 10, not PM. Again, make sure that this is set on the AM version. And my class is only 50 minutes long, but for the sake of, easy maneuvers here, I will just keep it on 1 hour. Again, something important for you to know is that Zoom will not close after 1 hour. It is basically just telling the students that the meeting that they have scheduled will only last for an hour. But if you close the meeting after 55 minutes, there's no problem. And if it lasts a little longer, there's no problem as well. Since you will be the person leading the conversation in the Zoom room, you decide when to start it and when to end it. The time zone, again, if you are teaching from Texas, which is also the time zone for the students, I recommend not changing it. The first critical feature here after the date will be to set this meeting as a recurring one. So by clicking on this box, you will see that now you have a recurrence box, repeat, and end date. The first thing you'll want to do is change the recurrence to not daily, but weekly. The reason for this is that you're not teaching on the weekend. So if you set that daily meeting, even if you teach Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, it will also send an invitation for the weekend. So let's not traumatize the students before we even get started this semester. And then you will select the days of the week for which you teach. In my case, the 26th is a Wednesday, and then I will teach also on Fridays and Mondays. Okay, so these 3 days are when my class will be meeting. And that seems perfect. Now, the last thing I will want to do is set the end date for these Zoom meetings. And the semester will last, as we know, roughly until December 9th, which seems right. And as you see, as I've entered the end date, now next to recurring meeting, you can observe that every week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, my class will take place until December 9th, which is a total of 45 occurrences. So 45 meetings with my students, which seems about right. Again, you will have more or less depending on how many days a week you end up teaching. So let's scroll down and continue our little journey into scheduling the meeting. Registration has an option for required, and I would personally not include it. I did not do this last semester. If you start doing this, you will probably have to also set up a password for your students. And as we all know, teaching online already takes a little bit of effort. And my guess is we should not make it as complicated as possible for the students or for yourself. So if you are not particularly inclined to have a required and a registration button, let's just bypass this for now. The security, as I was talking to you about, is also something you may consider for the passcode. I do not want one. And the waiting room is one of the first options you may consider on your own. The waiting room option that you will click on or off, depending on what you want to do, will basically put the student in a room before the class begins. So as most of you perhaps saw before the webinar, you have this little message that shows on your screen telling you that the meeting is about to start and you have to be patient. If you do not select this option, the students will go right in the Zoom room as it begins. And personally, this is what I like, so I will not select the waiting room for now. The video option, again, is a very personal choice that you will need to make. For the host, I like to have my video on right away. This way, when I enter the Zoom room, the students see that I'm there right away. And this is sort of like entering a regular classroom, right? The students see you when you open the door and you walk through. And it's, I think, something very interesting for them to understand that you're trying to be there and be a presence also for them throughout the course of the semester. For the participant, the choice is yours. I also personally like to have it on, but some of you may want to be nice to the students and have it set on off so that the students also have a second to get ready before entering the classroom and then turn on their video. No matter what you do here, there will always be the chance for you to change this option as soon as you are inside the Zoom room anyway. The audio one, for telephone and computer audio, or both, I recommend to leave on both. And the reason for this is that some students will follow you on Zoom from the computer, but some students may not have access to a laptop or a computer at home or in their dorms. And therefore, some of them will use their smartphone to log into the class with you. This is not the preferred option, but just in case, you want to be considerate and leave it on both if that happens. And finally, a few more meetings options here for us. Enable join before host is another interesting option that I personally enjoy. When you do this, students can come into the room even before you as the instructor and the lead, let's say, Zoom room master get there. And this idea is basically the same one that recreating an atmosphere that you have in a regular classroom too. Some students like to come in 5 minutes early, sometimes chat with each other. If you have a very large class, maybe this is not the best option for you, but for most of us teaching language or small seminars, perhaps this is an option you may want to consider. I always had a number of students coming in early to my class online last semester just to catch up and start to get to know each other, which again is something that we want them to do eventually throughout the course of the semester. We're teaching them more than just knowledge. We're also teaching them social skills throughout the course of the semester. If you enable the join before host, however, I would encourage you to not mute the participants upon entry, otherwise they will not be able to talk to each other. And again, just like the video, this is a setting that can be edited once you are inside the Zoom room, okay? Finally, this last option, record the meeting automatically, is something you may want to consider if you want to make the recording of your class available to your students at all times after your class is done. This is a pretty interesting option for you if you tend to be forgetful, which I am. This way, once you start the course meeting, you do not have to think about starting the recording. It will do it automatically for you. If you click on this option, what you will see is that you can choose to save the recording on your local computer or in the cloud. My guess is saving it in the cloud is actually easier. If you save it on your local computer, you will then have to upload it on Canvas to make it available to your students, which is, again, one pretty complex step to proceed and to get done. If you put it in the cloud, you do not have to worry about anything. It will save here in your Canvas page automatically for you. And I will get into more detail about the recording in a minute. But for now, we'll get started. With all this, I will go back to the beginning of the page here and make sure that my schedule meeting is correct. So the topic course I haven't changed. I have set the right initial date for my class, the right duration for my class. I have set the recurring time on the days that were appropriate and the end date that is the end of the semester. I have changed the video and not the audio parameter, but then the meeting option for my own personal preferences. And you know, everything looks pretty good right now. So I will go ahead and not forget to save. Once I do this, I do not have to worry about starting the meeting right now unless you want to begin, but there's no need for this at this exact time. And I will return to Zoom here on the left. And as you see beforehand on this page, there is no single schedule meeting. And now my entire page is entirely complete. And you see for each and every single date of the semester on the days I teach, Monday, September 14, 16, 18, and so forth. And of course, it continues on pages 2, 3, and 4 on the right. And as you can see here, meeting ID is also identical, which makes it easy. Virtually all these rooms will be your private room to teach that one class for the rest of the semester. This operation is very interesting because now you don't have to worry about scheduling your class at all for the rest of the semester on a daily or on a weekly basis. It's all done, it's all ready to go, and you can just teach free of mind every single day. The idea is that all you'll have to do as the instructor is go on and press the start button to enter your Zoom room and meet your students. But we won't do that just right now. We'll begin with one other thing that is also important. We're talking about communication and transparency for yourself and for your students. So if I go back to the home button here, what I'll show you is how to tell your students where to find this meeting, right? So I will go into the student view that Pat showed you. And if you are a student in my course, the thing you will have to tell your students in the customary email that you tend to send to your students before the beginning of the semester, right, is simply to meet with us, go to Zoom, and then what you will see if you're a student is not the start button. However, it is just the join button. So all the students have to do on the right day and at the right time is log in into Canvas and then join the course Zoom room by clicking on this button right here. So very simple for them. You can just tell them how to walk through this procedure that they will then repeat every single day until the end of the semester. So very transparent for them as well, okay? Normally, I will also emphasize to echo what Pat was telling you. If you set up your settings correctly, and if you tell your students to set up their notification correctly, your students will also receive in their email on Canvas a notification telling that there have been classes scheduled for them in enhancing French skills. So one more reason for them to make sure that they all have the notifications turned on. This way you also don't have to remind them where to find the invitation. It will get straight to their inbox. Something pretty interesting to do as well in that case. So anyway, we have our meeting schedule and everything is ready to go. Let's pretend that we are next Wednesday, August 26th, and I am about to go in to meet my students. How does that look like? Well, very simple. I find the button and I press start. And now I'll walk you through exactly the step that you will have to begin the course as an instructor from within the Zoom room. So the first message you will have is, of course, open Zoom. And I know that a few of you are at least familiar with this right now, and you will be connecting. And here we are. The first thing that you will want to do, of course, is join with computer audio. And welcome to Inception. I am also here with you in my own personal Zoom room. So of course, I am here now just by myself because the students haven't received the invitation. My course is not published, but I am here with you and will show you how, as a lead instructor, you will proceed in order to make your class interactive and engaging for your students. So what you will see here at the bottom is the console that each and every single one of you will have in your Zoom room. The first one, I will proceed from left to right, is the mute button. The mute button, of course, you will press in case you do not want the students to hear you, but you can also manage here, if you press the little scroll button, the audio settings for the students as well by clicking on this button here, in case you want to mute all people who are in the class because you are lecturing, and so forth and so forth. The video button is also pretty interesting. If you click it, it will turn off your video. If you click on, it will turn on your video. If you press on the video settings that is here, you will enter more specific options that you have here, from general to video to audio and share screen as well. For example, the side-by-side mode, making sure that the students, if they are in a breakout room, which I'll talk to you about very quickly, can see each other correctly, not back and forth. So there are plenty of things for you to observe and sort of peruse in your own time if you want to. The virtual background option is pretty interesting as well. Some of us have used it in the past. So if you don't know how to do it, the very simple thing is that you can click on plus and add a video or an image and then have the UT tower behind you or a fake office. Who knows if I'm in my real office right now, if this is a virtual background, we don't know. But the idea is that if you want to sort of preserve that sense of intimacy, and if you're teaching from home, you can add something here, of course. All right, so I will let you again explore these things here in your own time. It's very easy to find. And I will continue telling you a bit more about what we have here at the bottom. The security option is fairly new, and when you click on it, there's something interesting that you want to consider, especially if you are teaching a class and expecting your students to share material with you, the same way I'm sharing my screen with you now, is to press on this option that will then have the little arrow, the little click V next to it, and that will allow all the students to also share their screen. So if, say, you are expecting them to do a class project and you want to show you want to see their screens with a PowerPoint, they can do that as long as you allow them to share their screen, okay? You can also, allow them to rename themselves. Something very interesting to do in case I saw that some of you attending the webinar had their pronouns next to their names. You can also decide if you have a nickname to change to your preferred name. All these options are really available to your students and are quite nice too, because you get to see your students' names right in front of your eyes, which, if you're forgetful like me, can be an advantage of teaching online compared to teaching in a real class where you sometimes forget if you have a number of students, especially the first week. Well, that being said. Okay, where will you find your participants is right here as well. So once you click on this button here, what you will see is a list of all the people who are there with you in the classroom. You can, of course, have more options here, and that's also where you can unmute people, mute them, allow them to unmute themselves. All these settings are here in the participant. Of course, Pat was talking about attendance. If you want to stick to the basic and have something a little bit more simple and have your own notebook with the names of the people who are attending class, this is where you will find all the names of your participants to register attendance if needed. All right, I will collapse this page here. The chat one that I think some of you are very familiar with by now, but something very interesting to think about for the chat. If you want to ask a question to the students and they can have a visual of what's going on. Again, some students may have problems with their computer and the audio is a little, unstable. Things like this can happen. You can, of course, send a message. They can, of course, send a message to you. And of course, the thing that is interesting too, is you can also require them to only talk to you if you press host only. So if you're scared that they will have conversations in the background without you being included or involved, you can limit this. And I heard that this was some of the concern for the people who were teaching, again, not knowing what was really happening, then that's an option for you as well. All right, I think this is about it for the chat option here. And one of the first one that is quite important is the shared screen option here. So once you actually decide to share material with your students, again, here I'm in my Zoom room, all they can see is me and all I can see is them. If you have a PowerPoint or a slideshow or anything that I want to share with my students, this is how you will proceed. You will simply click on the shared screen button, and what you will see is this little a panel set here, and you can share anything from your desktop to a whiteboard if you want to write things, of course iPhone, iPad, and other things, but that's not entirely necessary. If you do want to share something that has audio components like a video, for example, do not forget to press here share computer sound. This will be important in order to make sure that the students do not just hear you, but hear the content of, say, a YouTube video that you're playing, a song, or whatever that is, okay? This option is really interesting, and I really encourage you to make the most out of it. Students generally really enjoy seeing live content in front of them. It makes the class more engaging and interactive for them. All right, so I'm already sharing my screen. I will not create a double inception by sharing again, and I will continue taking you here on the little console. The polling feature that Pat has done with you is also something you may want to consider if you want to gauge the atmosphere of your class, or if you want to, again, keep your students on their toes and things as such. When you click on it, as you will see, there are currently no polls in my Zoom room because I have not created any. The thing you will have to do is press on edit, and you will leave the Zoom room and take you to your browser, where you will be able to create a variety of polls and so forth and so forth. If you want to create one instantly, you can do this, add a question as well right away. I do not tend to use polls in my class, as you can see, but again, I know a few of you may find it engaging, so feel free to do so. I am currently recording, as you can see, so I will not be pressing the stop button or the pause button, but in case you want to select only a few parts of your class to be recorded, you can do so here if you don't have the automatic record button on, for example, as I showed you in the scheduling your classes. This is something you may want to consider. I will show you again after this little demo where to find the recordings in Canvas. Closed caption is something that we currently do not really support in Zoom at UT. I was talking to some of my colleagues who are here in the webinar with me. You are supposed to sort of decide on your own and hire somebody to help you do the closed captioning if you want this. The good news is if you do a recording of your class, you will also save the chat box, and I will tell you a little bit more about this too, so you can have a transcript of what's going on. And I guess this is the second best option available to you in case you have this. Again, we want to be mindful of students perhaps with disabilities and things as such, but that you need to make sure that things are very clear and transparent from the beginning of the semester. All right, we're getting towards the end. I will talk to you about one of the best options really that is available in Zoom now, and that is the breakout rooms. The breakout rooms is an option that allows you to split your entire class in however many groups as you want for however long as you want in order to have people talk to each other and participate, something that we know teaching languages specifically can be absolutely essential for all of us. So how does this work? Because again, think about it, you have 20 students right now in the main room with you. They cannot all repeat at the same time. They cannot all sort of like jumping at the same time. What if some people are shy and, you know, have a hard time kind of like, you know, throwing themselves in? This is where the breakout rooms can really help everyone, including you as an instructor. So if you click on this button, what you will see is that you have the option of creating a number of rooms. Here, I don't have any participants, so it says 0, but if you have 20 students, it will give you the number. And you can set as many rooms as you want, as you have participants. So 20 students means 20 rooms maximum. Let's say that you want to have them split in groups of 4, that means 5 rooms. And if you set on automatic, Zoom will simply split however many students there are without thinking about the names, without thinking about anything, which again, I really appreciate because students tend to sit next to their best friends for the entire semester and don't always talk to all the people in the class. But when you do this, Zoom just decide to randomly assign partners, and therefore you get the sense that students will really get to know as many people as possible in the classroom, which is a very good thing. So let's do that. I'm creating my break room, and as you see, the 5 rooms are here. You can choose to rename them as you want, delete them as you want, and assign the people as you want if it's not done automatically. Of course, here, let's pretend that I have 20 students. I will see the names of these students under each respective rooms. What I will do then, perhaps if you want to, is to look at the options. You can move all participants into breakout rooms automatically. So once you start and launch the breakout rooms, they receive a little message say, you have been invited to join this room. They usually click yes. If you want to just send them in, you can just click on this option here and they will go right away. You can have also a timer that is set. Again, a very interesting option. If you want the students to only be in for, let's say, 5 minutes, all you have to do is change the number here to 5, and the rooms will only be on for 5 minutes. Notify me when the time is up. And the countdown option is also pretty neat. That means that at 4 minutes, the students will receive a little message and say, your room will close in 60 seconds. Now, how do you do this once you start the room? More specifically, here, if I had students, I will click on open all rooms and the students will just dispatch right away. At this point, I will be by myself as the lead instructor in the main room without anybody else. What you will have to do is next to assign, you will have a button that says join. And at this stage, you will just click join to go from one room to the next for however long you want. And once it's kind of done for you, instead of having open all rooms, you will have a message that says, a little button that says close all rooms, for you to just bring everyone back and then discuss as an entire unit, as an entire class all over again. All right, so I'm gonna stop this here. I will also now, we have the little reaction button, which are again, pretty nice in case you just wanna send a little message, a little thumbs up to your students without talking too much like I do. But I'm done with it. My class went really, really well. I'm really happy. The students are super glad that we've met on this day. First day of class, so long. And I will now press end the meeting. And as you've probably seen before in the past, you are now the lead instructor, so you cannot just leave the meeting. It's going to be very, very important for you to press end meeting for all. And this way, the students will also just be quote unquote taken out of the Zoom room, and they will not just, endlessly aim in your Zoom room while you're gone, okay? So this is what I will do now. And here I am, we're back to my main screen. I have thoroughly enjoyed this little demo here. I will now exit out of Zoom. Oh, sorry. I will now exit out of Zoom and take you back to Canvas. So everything worked pretty well, as you can see. My meeting went okay, and I will now pay attention to these extra tabs here, as I mentioned earlier. The cloud recording one is the first one. So I had not set the automatic recording to my page for the little demo that I made a second ago, but basically if you do a recording, this is where you will find it if you select the cloud option again in Canvas. What you will see is the name of the course plus the date, the length of the recording that you've done, and at the very end, something very important will be the publish button. So basically what it will do is the recording will be saved here in Canvas for you, but not made available to the students unless you decide to do so. And to do so, you will just have to click a little on-off button, which is very, very easy to see once there's actually recording here. And the students will be available to see, and I don't think they'll be available for download necessarily, which is pretty interesting too, because if you remember, we've received a lot of emails from the UT administration and FERPA regulations. Students can see the videos that are in the course. You technically, I think it's always a nice thing to tell them that you are recording the course. However, they're not allowed to show the course to anybody else that is not in the class. So it's educational purposes only. So even if they think your class is the best one in the world, they're technically not allowed to show their friends or to show their parents or to show anybody else. So something very important to mention to your students on the first day of class if you intend to have a recording, for example. A last thing to think about, although the cloud is a very nice option, you only have that much space available for recordings. So what does that mean? It means that after a number of classes and a number of recordings that you have, you will be told by Canvas that you have reached capacity and that therefore you will have to delete some of the video or perhaps unpublish some of the videos. There's a way to think about this as something positive. The reason for this is I tend to have a recording of my class from time to time for students who are missing, but just like I usually do in the classroom too, I want the students to come and attend, and I don't want them to think that if there's a recording, they never have to show up to class because all they have to do is play the video and just lay back and things are okay. So what I usually tell my students is I will have a recording made, perhaps, or usually that's the case, but only available for a certain amount of days or a certain amount of weeks. So after that time is passed, I will delete the video and it won't be available to you. So make sure that if you miss class, catch up as quickly as possible. The idea of teaching online instead of face-to-face is still to recreate a situation that is as identical as possible to a real classroom environment. And that is definitely an advantage, but you don't want students to take too much out of it, so to say. All right, so I think this is mostly it for scheduling the meetings, dealing with the Zoom room when you are teaching, and of course, finding your recordings afterwards. Now I'll finish with a little word on the personal meeting room. So this option here, when you click, is basically works the same way than when you have a regular Zoom room that you schedule. If you press here, edit this meeting, you can change all the settings, the same way that I showed you earlier. But basically, unless you send an invitation to your students after you save here, nobody can really come into the Zoom room with you. So it will exactly show you what I demonstrated a minute ago when I'm by myself, sort of talking to myself. And this is something that some of you, if you want to, can use to do asynchronous teaching. And by this, I mean, if you start the meeting here and find yourself on your own in your Zoom room, you can start a recording, play your slideshow, do a lecture for however long you want. And if you choose to also record the meeting automatically in the cloud, that recording will also save right here. Oh, as you can see, it is here now. So if that does this, the students will be able to see the lecture or the presentation or whatever you want to show them without them having to come to the Zoom meeting with you guys. So this is a pretty advantageous thing as well. If some of you want to teach hybrid, for example, and say you don't want to teach on a certain day, or you want to teach asynchronously on a certain day, there is this option for you right there available. So here to finish on the cloud recording, since it took a little while, I guess, to convert, this is when I would publish to make the video available for my students. And here you go. You see the files, you see the name, and you see the date and the time as I was mentioning. And I will go ahead and delete this since Nobody needs to see the recording of myself talking on my own. So with all that being said, I believe that this is sort of the greater horizon for using Zoom in Canvas for you as an instructor. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer at the end of the presentation. I will now stop sharing my screen and we'll go back to the slideshow with Pat. And I believe we'll talk to you about resources in a second.
Thank you, Max, for this wonderful presentation and for giving us so much information on Zoom. I know that as I was looking through the chat, we definitely had some things come up, and I'm sure you'll catch up as I give my part of the presentation. But so as Max indicated at the very next stage after this one in our presentation, we will have an opportunity for questions. And so I've been keeping a very close eye on that chat and making sure that nothing falls through the cracks. So stick with us here. So now that we've completed the Zoom meetings portion of our presentation, we are now going to begin the resources and contacts part of our presentation. And so as Max said, we are here to support you, and as such, resources plays a pretty vital role. So our first poll here before we get started is to really sort of gauge if you feel as though you know where to find these resources, if you have the resources that you need. And so I will be waiting to hear back from you guys to see if you know where to find these resources, and we'll discuss. So I cannot see the progress of the voting, but I know that Pat is keeping an eye out here. All right. Okay, so it looks great for me. Some of you say that yes, you know where to find supporting resources. 33%, so 11 of you said no, and some of you are unsure, a large majority of you, which makes me happy because it is my job to empower you with resources and give you exactly what you need. So I'm very excited to do this. As we go back into the slide and pull up our list of resources that I'm going to walk you through, I wanted to begin by reminding everybody here in attendance that this webinar entitles you to CPE credit as well as a certificate. So if you are interested in this and you have not registered through TLC, you just came to this webinar by clicking through a URL but did not register at all, and you would like to be considered for the credit or for the certificate, this is the moment for you to type in the chat your email address. And I'm going to ask every participant here that is just typing in questions or chatting to hold off a little bit during this part of the presentation, so that anybody who wants to type in their email address, you can type it in right now, and we will keep a record of this and make sure that it gets to TLC so that you can have your credit and or certificate. So thank you so much. I see that some of you are already inputting your emails. This is wonderful. So I'm going to get started with the resources while you guys do this, and I will let you know when the time's up to put in your emails. The very first resource that we have at the top here is just your Zoom UT accounts. And so this is the Zoom page that's associated with UTexas, our UT entity. And so there you have access to your profile, your Zoom Pro profile, and you can have access to far more detailed settings than you would be able to access if you were simply looking through Canvas at the Zoom extension page there on the menu that Max showed us. So keep that in mind. There are lots of different elements to it, and it would be good to explore that at your leisure. Underneath that, we have the Zoom tutorial videos, which are generated by Zoom. They have enormous amount of tutorials and videos that you can watch for any number of topics that you're interested in learning more about. So that is definitely a resource worth exploring, as well as the Faculty Innovation Center link for Zoom support. They also have generated some nice content for you there. So this is pretty much some of the more Zoom specific links and resources that you might want to consider for additional resources when it comes to Zoom instruction. Next are a series of links that are associated with Canvas. So we've got the Canvas Training Center, which is specific to the Canvas that we use through Instructure. There's also Total Canvas, which is a really interesting approach to workshopping, where you would enroll in some workshops, and it looks very much like a class. So they require you to enroll in these, and by following this URL, you would then be led through the steps to do so. And you can take a series of workshops that are generated by and led by Canvas people to help you get more familiar on a number of topics. Below that, we have the UT Austin Canvas support URL that I'm sure some of you are already familiar with. So all of these are really nice resources for a little bit more information on how to approach Canvas and anything that Canvas has to offer for us. Beneath that, we have a series of more comprehensive or larger scaled resources. So the LATES help desk and phone number and chat, they're wonderful. The LATES people are just very knowledgeable, and anything that isn't extremely specific, or even if it's specific, they actually know the answer to pretty much anything as far as I know. So they're a great resource there, and they have a specific page dedicated to the transition to online instruction, which is the very next link below the one I just pointed out. So that's a really good page to go check out. And within that page, we have a tab that was just made, and we're very excited about this. It is the Language Courses tab, which is on the LATE site. And there you have a number of information, including web events, the calendar for those web events, which include webinars such as these, so the TLC, and LATES have a set of webinars that are coming up this fall, which we're are going to talk about a little bit in a minute. And you can access the webinar recording. So this recording, for instance, is going to be there. We also have some resources for language teaching, including a cheat sheet, which is really fun, with these links available that you can download. So this is a really great resource, and we're very, very excited that we have our own tab specific to language instruction. This is really cool. Beneath that, we have the link to the box folder, which I do not remember who it was, forgive me, but earlier in the chat at the very beginning, somebody asked about the link to the box folder, and that is the link right there. So Pat or Max, perhaps Pat, if we could just put that link into the chat for people to have access, that would be really good right now. And I know that folks are still putting in their email addresses for those credits or certificates, but it would be good to have that there, and we'll try to refresh that a little later as well. So that box link is right there, and it is a part of that cheat sheet, I believe, that is on the LATES page. So that will be available to you multiple places. We also have a more UT Austin-wide support for online migrations, so even more resources there for you. And beneath that, we have some other types of resources that are not necessarily university affiliated, but that we thought that you might want to explore. Google Drive is great for a number of reasons. They have a sort of comparable suite that Microsoft has in terms of Excel or documents, and those can be really useful if you want to quickly communicate with students or have another way of holding data. So that's a good example of something that you can explore. There's also a link beneath that for a Toolbox that includes Panopto, but other tools that is a list of downloadable tools that you can use to add to your instruction arsenal, so to speak. And so if you are interested in that, you could definitely go explore and see how to have access to these tools. Gradescope for students, which is right beneath that, is a paper assignment management tool that's incorporated in Canvas. And so when you follow this link, you will be taken to a sort of explanatory page that explains to you how it works and how to use it. And beneath that, we have a couple of phone numbers, which some of you may be familiar with, but if you're not, they're good resources to have. The Canvas support for faculty number. In an emergency, it's really nice to have a person to talk to, and I believe they're 24/7, so that's kind of fantastic. And the students have their own, so we don't have to fight for access, and we have dedicated lines, so that's pretty good. So those numbers are really useful. And finally, but not least of all, we have some free resources that we thought you might be interested in knowing about. Scannable by Evernote is an app that allows you to take a picture of any article or any sort of physical document and create a PDF from it. So that is really lovely and really useful, and a lot of people have had some very good feedback about using this app. So we encourage you to try it out if this is something that you think you might benefit from. This is not sponsored. And beneath that, we have Sejda.com, which is one of many PDF converters or editors. So this is nice because unlike Adobe, it's free, and you can go online and it doesn't spam you. It just, you can upload any PDF that you want to edit or change, and it will give you the ability to do so. And the only thing you have to do afterwards is just save it and download it back onto your computer. So you do have a limited amount of time to work on these PDFs, so you can't spend a week editing them, but you can work on them for an hour or two. I forget what the deadline is for that. So that could be a really nice resource if you want to try that. So this is a very quick rundown of all of these resources that are in addition to what we have done for you. But just to circle back up to that box link in there, we also have videos that Pat referred to, some videos for Canvas, but also some videos for Zoom and how to use these. So it kind of breaks down some of these tasks and give you little video tutorials on how to do the things that we discussed in our webinar. So if you wanted a little bit more assistance, you could use that in complement to anything that is available through Zoom or Canvas themselves, or Faculty Innovation Center, or LATES, or all the wonderful people who are trying their very best to make this as smooth a transition for you as possible. So now that I'm done talking to you about resources, I wanted to begin drawing us toward the wrap up and question and answers portion of our discussion here and our presentation here. And in order to do so, we really wanted to get started with a poll, which is to gauge how did we do. During this presentation, we gave you a lot of information, and we really want to know if we answered your questions. So Pat, I believe we have a poll that is coming up to see if there are still some outstanding questions from our audience, other than the ones that were asked and answered in the chat. And if so, we are going to proceed forward with those. So as you all are answering these questions. I feel very Texan. You all, y'all should say, right? It's more appropriate. I am going to try and catch up on what's been going on. All right, and seems you guys are still voting. Maybe, yes. All right, so most of your questions were answered. 61% of you had your questions answered. Some of you not so much, and some of you not sure yet. So we are just gonna dive in to our question and answer portion to make sure that everybody gets their answers. And in order to do so, I just wanted to kick us off with an earlier question that was asked, and I promised Josh that I would get to it, and it is with regards to Zoom. So Max, when we were talking about breakout rooms, Josh wanted to know if students are able to request you to come into their breakout rooms, and I believe that you know how to do that.
Yes, actually, that's a really good question, and will also actually be followed by precision. So it's a good opportunity for me to jump in. Once the students are in the Zoom room, they can of course access the chat, but they can also have access to a button that calls the host, and basically the host is you. So you shouldn't have any problem if, for example, the students are in a room and feel like they did not understand the question properly. You can of course tell them just, call me in, so to say. But on this note, two things. Once you put the students in the breakout room, they won't have access to any of the shared documents that you have. So make sure that they perhaps have a handout, or they can refer to something before you send them in the breakout room. The second thing that is also very important for you to think about, if you want to do a recording of your class, is that the recording will only be of what you as the host, as the instructor, can see. And therefore, if you want all the students to have also the recordings available in their breakout rooms for one reason or another, don't forget to also ask them to do so. I think this will be something strategic for you, unless you think about just having the recording of the students in a given room.
Great, thank you, Max. And just to update everyone, I'm sure you all saw in the chat that we posted a link to the box folder as requested there. To sort of circle back to Megan's question, there you can find recordings of the webinars, but also the additional materials such as tutorial videos and also the handout. There is a link to that handout also in the chat, so you can definitely look at that. So Lyndon Gill asked, should I use the personal meeting room for office hours or another separate recurring Zoom meeting room? And so that question had actually come up in a different way earlier. So first of all, just to be clear, the meeting ID that you get once you set up in Zoom the way that Max showed us through Canvas is separate from your personal ID. So those are different rooms. Your class has a different meeting ID, and your personal ID, meeting ID is separate. And so you can use your personal meeting ID for office hours. I suppose it is your preference, but I'm gonna let Max sort of give more of his input on that.
Yes, so yeah, thank you for the question. It's also a very, very good question. Some of you may be, of course, interested in holding office hours virtually, that is online. And of course, you won't be able to do this or want to do this with the class that you've scheduled for everyone, since it's generated that meeting ID that all the students will have. The way I tend to handle it is simply go into my personal meeting room and generate an automatic meeting for which I send an invitation to the student in question who is interested in about having an office hour conversation with me. And I can send this link again to another student if I get another message a little after. Again, think about ways that you can handle this in a strategic way. It's not going to be as easy for students to just walk in unless you want to have this Zoom room open from, say, 1 to 2 p.m. every Monday and every Thursday. But I think this is a good compromise. You just tell the students, send me an email if you want to meet with me in a Zoom room. I'll send you an invitation and you can get it started from there. And I think it usually works really, really well.
Great, thanks. The other question that I saw in the chat and I wanted to clarify here is actually a question about Canvas. And let me see, so I believe Denise asked about Canvas help with assignments and SpeedGrader, but there wasn't, that I can tell, any specific question or more explanation around that. So I think that may be talking about assignments generally, and perhaps some resources where could we find more information about how to create assignments, and the SpeedGrader might be useful. I'm not sure. The question was just, it was a statement that wasn't elaborated. Sorry, Pat.
You want me to answer?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry, would you be
Is there any additional help that can be provided about assignments and SpeedGrader?
There's probably a tutorial, a Canvas tutorial on how to set up an assignment. It's a relatively simple thing to do, frankly. I would encourage you to look there. As far as SpeedGrader is concerned, once the students have completed an activity, you can just click on SpeedGrader when you look at that activity, and then you'll be able to just advance through each. I probably should have shown that, but I didn't. I'm sorry. You can just advance through one by one through the students and look at the grade. If it's been a Canvas generated grade that's automatic, you can just verify that it's accurate and you're done. Maybe leave some feedback in the feedback box if you like. If it's something that's teacher graded, then obviously you would want to grade the part that's teacher graded and then update the score. But the SpeedGrader is quite easy and I think very efficient, as you have a lot of experience with it.
Yeah, agreed. And Denise did specify that she wanted to know how to use SpeedGrader. So I think that is actually answering that question. I agree with you, Pat. It is very easy and intuitive to use. Oftentimes, the outstanding items that need to be reviewed by a person rather than auto-graded appear on a to-do list on the main menu when you open your course and go to your homepage. So it should be very easy for you to see what items haven't been graded at all and need your attention, or have items that need to be reviewed by you. And it automatically gives you the option on the side to use SpeedGrader, and it just allows you to work through each student's submission, and any grade that is entered is automatically mirrored and registered in the gradebook. So that's a really nice way of keeping track of that. Give me a second here to check what questions have been answered.
There's one question, I can jump in. There's one question
Yes.
from Phyllis, and this one was already just answered. How do you list assignments under a module and distinguish those that are not to be graded? Perhaps Pat could answer this question.
When you add an assignment in a module,
yes.
What will happen is Canvas will create that assignment for you. You'll fill in the appropriate information. If it's something that you don't want graded, I use this all the time for other things, you just put in 0 points. So there's a place to put in the number of points that it's worth. You do that by hand, and then so you can easily just put in 0. Does that answer the question? Okay.
I believe it does. Great. It looks as though all the questions are answered.
I think I've kept track as well. I think we've done quite a few. Again, if anyone has any additional question at this time, feel free to use the chat box. We'll keep our eyes on them just in case something happens.
Yeah, but I think that maybe it looks as though we did cover a lot of the questions, and some of you are starting to leave. So maybe if we can jump back into the presentation, I can give you a quick recap of our objectives today for this webinar. We wanted to make sure that you were aware of the basic steps for getting ready to transition to online teaching. We wanted to also make sure that you have knowledge with regards to the capacities of Canvas and Zoom to help you to transition to online teaching and learning, and to make this as easy as possible. And we definitely wanted to make sure that you had the tools and the resources you needed to get started and to use Canvas and Zoom. And so with that in mind, for those of you who are still here, we wanted to give you a poll to sort of gauge after this presentation, how are you feeling? We took your temperature at the beginning to see how do you gauge your ability to teach online this fall, and now we're going to ask you the very same question to see if you feel a little bit better, a little bit more confident, and a little bit more prepared. So go ahead and give us your honest answer. We can take it, and we'll see if you feel very confident, confident, neutral, unconfident, or totally unsure. Hopefully no totally unsures, but we'll see. Oh, and I did want to mention this as well to those of you who are still here, that with regards to the transcript that is automatically generated once you make a recording, that if you are teaching in a different language, the parts that are not in English might be gibberish. So be mindful of that. So if you're only teaching in English and everything's in English, it'll be good. But if there's another language, it might not come out very good. So right now, it looks like a lot of you are very confident and confident about your ability to get started, to teach in the fall, and some of you are neutral or unconfident still. And so if that is the case, we definitely have some future workshops. Thank you, Megan, for mentioning that. We definitely have some future workshops, which are on that languages tab on LATES. So go check us out. And we also have our contact information for you. So this is Pat, mine, and Max's information. That is back there. And also, yes, there we go. So these are our email addresses. So if you wish to, we are more than happy to answer any further questions. And also, here is the upcoming list of webinars that are coming up. So we have quite a few with times and dates. Again, this is on the website for LATES and TLC as well, I assume. Yes. And so feel free to check those out and visit us in our future webinars. Thank you for attending today's webinar, and have a great semester.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good luck.
Yeah. You're welcome.